You don't look at them as iconic characters. I mean, they refer to them as that. If they become that, you're just doing you're on a day-to-day, running it, having a good time, and trying to make it.
The film Tombstone is often remembered as one of the most famous Western movies ever made. Even people who are not big fans of Western films have usually heard about it. Released in 1993, the movie tells the story of the legendary lawman Wyatt Earp and his friend Doc Holliday during their time in the wild town of Tombstone, Arizona. The film became popular because of its powerful acting, memorable lines, and exciting gunfights. Over the years, many viewers have quoted famous lines from the movie and praised the performances of actors like Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. However, what most fans never realized is that the movie almost turned into a disaster before it was even finished. Behind the scenes, the production of Tombstone was filled with pressure, rushed decisions, and unexpected changes. The studio wanted the movie completed as quickly as possible, which meant the cast and crew had very little time to prepare. Scripts were still being adjusted while filming had already started, and many scenes were changed right on the set. Even the way the movie was directed was not as simple as it appeared. Officially, the film was directed by George P. Cosmatos, a filmmaker known for action movies. But as the production moved forward, things did not work exactly as planned. Some actors began helping shape scenes and making creative decisions so that the movie could stay on schedule. This unusual situation meant that the final film we see today was created through teamwork, improvisation, and quick thinking rather than careful long-term planning. The pressure was intense because another film about Wyatt Earp was also being made at the same time. That movie, called Wyatt Earp, starred Kevin Costner and was expected to be a large and expensive production. The studio behind Tombstone feared that if the other movie came out first, audiences might lose interest in their film. Because of this fear, they pushed the team to work faster and finish filming before their competition reached theaters. As a result, the people working on Tombstone had to deal with a very tight schedule and many unexpected problems. Outdoor scenes depended on weather and daylight, meaning the crew sometimes had only a few hours to complete complicated sequences. If a scene did not work perfectly, there was rarely time to film it again. Despite all these challenges, the actors remained focused and determined to make the story believable and exciting. In fact, many of the decisions made under pressure helped shape the unique style of the film. The performances felt natural and strong because the actors were deeply involved in creating their characters. What makes the story of Tombstone so interesting today is that audiences watching the finished movie rarely notice how chaotic the production actually was. On screen, the story looks confident and carefully crafted, but behind the camera the team was constantly solving problems and adjusting plans. The success of the movie proves that sometimes great films are not created through perfect planning, but through creativity, cooperation, and determination when things become difficult. One of the biggest reasons the production of Tombstone became so intense was the race against another movie about the same legendary lawman, Wyatt Earp. During the early 1990s, Hollywood studios were very interested in telling stories about famous figures from the Old West. At the same time that Tombstone was being planned, another large film called Wyatt Earp was also in development. That movie starred Kevin Costner, who was already one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Because of his popularity and the large budget behind the project, many people believed that Costner's film would become the definitive story about Wyatt Earp. This situation made the studio behind Tombstone nervous. They worried that if the other movie reached theaters first, audiences might feel they had already seen the story of Wyatt Earp and might not be interested in watching another similar film so soon. To avoid this problem, the studio made a bold decision. They pushed the filmmakers to move forward with production as quickly as possible so that Tombstone could be released before the competing movie. On paper, this strategy seemed smart. If Tombstone came out first, it could attract audiences and establish itself as the main Western story about Wyatt Earp. However, the decision also created serious pressure for the cast and crew. Normally, a film takes months or even years of careful preparation before cameras begin to roll. Scripts are polished, scenes are carefully planned, and actors have plenty of time to prepare their performances. In the case of Tombstone, many of these steps had to be shortened or skipped. The schedule was tight from the very beginning, and the production team knew that every day counted. As filming started, some parts of script were still being rewritten. This meant that actors sometimes arrived on set without knowing exactly how a scene would end or what lines they would deliver. Writers and producers often worked late into the night making adjustments so that filming could continue the next morning. While this situation might sound chaotic, it also created a sense of urgency and creativity. The cast and crew had to think quickly and make practical decisions in real time. If a scene was too long, it had to be shortened immediately. If the weather changed or a location became unavailable, the team had to find another way to film the moment. Many of these quick decisions helped shape the tone and pacing of the final movie. Instead of feeling slow or overly detailed, the story of Tombstone moves forward with strong momentum. The characters speak clearly and directly, and the scenes rarely feel unnecessary or dragged out. Another challenge came from the outdoor filming locations. Much of the movie was shot in the desert areas of Arizona, where weather conditions could change quickly. Since the story takes place in the late 1800s, the filmmakers had to build detailed sets that looked like an authentic Western town. Once these sets were ready, the team had limited time to use them before moving on to the next location. This meant that every member of production had to stay focused and organized. Even small delays could cause problems for the entire schedule. Despite these difficulties, the actors worked hard to bring their characters to life. The pressure of the schedule did not stop them from delivering powerful performances. In fact, many people later said that the intense environment helped them stay fully committed to their roles. Everyone understood that the film depended on teamwork and trust. If one person struggled, the rest of the group stepped in to help keep the project moving forward. Looking back today, it is surprising that such a rushed production managed to create a film that feels so confident and complete. Audiences watching Tombstone rarely realize how close the movie came to falling apart during its creation. The determination of the cast and crew allowed the project to survive a difficult beginning and eventually become one of the most beloved Western films of its time as the production of Tombstone continued under heavy pressure. Another unusual situation slowly developed behind the scenes. Officially, the film was directed by George P. Cosmatos, a filmmaker known for large action movies and his ability to complete projects on schedule. The studio believed he was the right choice because he had experience managing productions that required strong visual control and quick decision-making. Before working on Tombstone, Cosmatos had directed popular action films such as Rambo, First Blood Part 2, which proved that he could deliver a successful movie while working within the expectations of a major studio. At first, everything seemed normal. Cosmatos was introduced as a director, and he was responsible for organizing the film scenes, guiding the actors, and making sure the story came together on screen. However, because the schedule for Tombstone was so tight, the production did not always follow the traditional system used in most films. Usually, the director makes most of the creative decisions while the actors focus mainly on performing their roles. In this case, the constant rush meant that many decisions had to be made immediately, often in the middle of filming. As problems appeared on set, the team could not always wait for long meetings or discussions. They needed quick solutions so that cameras could keep rolling and the film could stay on schedule. During this time, one actor became especially important in helping guide these choices. That actor was Kurt Russell, who played the role of Wyatt Earp. Russell already had experience working in Western films and understood the style and atmosphere that audiences expected from the genre. He also had a strong relationship with the studio and a reputation for being professional and reliable. Because of these factors, other members of the cast and crew often turned to him when quick decisions were needed. According to interviews given years later, Russell became deeply involved in shaping how many scenes were filmed. This did not happen through any official announcement. Cosmatos remained the credited director of the movie, and he continued to oversee the project as a whole. However, the reality on set was more complicated. Russell sometimes helped decide how scenes should be staged, where actors should stand, and how dialogue should be delivered. These responsibilities are usually handled by a director, but in this situation, they were shared in order to keep the production moving smoothly. Russell later explained that his goal was never to replace Cosmatos or take control of the film. Instead, he simply stepped in whenever production needed help solving a problem quickly. For example, if a scene felt too slow or confusing, Russell might suggest a simple way to perform it so that the story would remain clear. if actors were unsure about how to approach a moment. He could offer ideas based on his understanding of the characters. Because everyone on the set was focused on finishing the film on time, these suggestions were often accepted without much debate. Over time, Russell's involvement grew larger. There were even moments when he worked closely with the crew to organize the blocking of scenes. In filmmaking, blocking refers to the way actors move and position themselves during a scene so that the camera can capture the action clearly. Western films rely heavily on this kind of planning, especially during tense confrontations or gunfights. Russell's experience helped the team create scenes that felt natural and visually exciting. Interestingly, he did not speak publicly about this unusual situation when the movie was first released. He wanted to respect Cosmatos and avoid creating controversy around the film. For many years, audiences simply believed that the production had followed a normal process. It was only later, after Cosmatos passed away in 2005, that Russell explained how much teamwork had actually gone into directing the film. His honesty revealed that the success of Tombstone came from a group effort rather than the work of a single person. The actors, crew members, and director all contributed their ideas to overcome the challenges of the schedule. This cooperative approach helped transform a rushed project into a movie that still feels powerful and carefully crafted decades later. Another important reason why Tombstone became such a memorable movie was the incredible performance of Val Kilmer as the famous gunslinger and gambler Doc Holliday. Even though the story mainly focuses on Wyatt Earp, many viewers walked away from the film talking most about Doc Holliday. His sharp humor, calm attitude, and unforgettable dialogue quickly made him one of the most beloved characters in the entire movie. Lines spoken by Doc Holliday became widely quoted by fans, and many critics later said that Kilmer delivered one of the greatest performances ever seen in a Western film. What most audiences did not realize, however, is that this performance was not simply the result of natural talent. Kilmer spent a great deal of time studying the real history of Doc Holliday and carefully preparing for the role before filming even began. The real Doc Holliday was known as a gambler, dentist, and gunfighter who lived during the dangerous days of the American frontier. He was also seriously ill with tuberculosis, a disease that slowly weakened his body over time. Kilmer wanted to understand how this illness would affect the character both physically and emotionally. Instead of portraying Doc as a loud or overly dramatic figure, Kilmer decided to present him as calm, controlled, and quietly confident. This choice helped make the character feel more realistic and mysterious. Throughout the movie, Doc Holliday rarely shows fear, even when facing dangerous situations. At the same time, the audience can see small signs that he is struggling with his illness. His breathing sometimes appears weak, and he occasionally coughs or looks tired. These small details were carefully planned by Kilmer to remind viewers that the character was living with serious disease while still maintaining his reputation as a fearless gunfighter. The balance between strength and vulnerability gave the character emotional depth and made his scenes especially powerful. Another interesting detail about Kilmer's performance is how he delivered his dialogue. Many actors in Western movies speak loudly or dramatically, but Kilmer chose a softer and more controlled style. His lines were often delivered slowly and with perfect timing, which made them even more memorable. This approach also matched the personality of Doc Holliday as a man who preferred intelligence and wit rather than loud displays of emotion. According to several members of the cast, some of Doc Holliday's dialogue was adjusted during filming. Because the production schedule was so tight, changes were often made directly on the set. Kilmer sometimes suggested small alterations to lines so that they would sound more natural or better fit the character's personality. These suggestions were usually accepted because the filmmakers recognized how well he understood the role. As a result, many of the most famous lines spoken by Doc Holliday were shaped by Kilmer's own creative ideas. Another reason his performance stood out was the chemistry he shared with Kurt Russell, who played Wyatt Earp. The friendship between Wyatt and Doc is one of the emotional centers of the story. While Wyatt tries to bring order to the lawless town of Tombstone, Doc often supports him with quiet loyalty and clever humor. Their conversations feel natural and believable, which helped audiences connect with both characters. The relationship also shows a different side of Doc Holliday. Even though he appears confident and fearless, he clearly respects Wyatt and values their friendship. This loyalty becomes especially meaningful as the story moves toward its dramatic confrontations. Over time, Kilmer's portrayal of Doc Holliday became one of the defining elements of the film. Many viewers remember his scenes more clearly than almost any other moment in Tombstone. Critics and fans alike praise the performance for its intelligence, subtlety, and emotional depth. Today, when people discuss great characters in Western movies, Doc Holliday in Tombstone is almost always mentioned near the top of the list. Kilmer's careful preparation and creative choices helped transform what could have been a simple supporting role into one of the most iconic performances in modern Western cinema. While the performances of actors like Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer helped shape the success of Tombstone, another powerful element that made the film stand out was its memorable dialogue and strong storytelling. Western films often rely on simple conversations and clear conflicts, but Tombstone managed to give its characters lines that felt both natural and powerful. Many fans still quote the film today, repeating phrases spoken by characters like Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. These lines became part of the movie's identity and helped it stay popular for many years. Interestingly, some of the most famous dialogue moments were not planned exactly the way audiences imagine. Because the film was produced under such tight time pressure, the script was sometimes adjusted while filming was already happening. This meant that writers, actors, and even producers occasionally worked together to reshape scenes so that they would flow better or fit the available time. Instead of following a rigid script, the cast had to remain flexible and ready to adapt. For example, if a line sounded unnatural or too long, it might be shortened right on the set. If a conversation between characters felt too slow, it could be rewritten so the story would move forward more quickly. This fast-paced creative process might sound risky, but it actually helped the movie maintain strong momentum. The dialogue rarely feels forced or overly complicated, which makes it easy for audiences to follow the story. Another reason the dialogue became so memorable was the way actors delivered their lines. In particular, Kilmer's portrayal of Doc Holliday brought a unique rhythm to the film's conversations. His calm voice and sharp wit made even simple sentences sound clever and unforgettable. When Doc Holliday speaks, he often does so with quiet confidence, making it clear that he understands the danger around him but refuses to show fear. This style of delivery turned many ordinary moments into iconic scenes that fans still discuss decades later. At the same time, Russell's performance as Wyatt Earp provided a strong emotional foundation for the story. Wyatt is portrayed as a man trying to leave behind his violent past and live a peaceful life with his family. However, the lawless nature of the town of Tombstone makes this goal almost impossible. As conflicts grow between the Earps and a group of criminals known as the Cowboys, Wyatt is forced to return to the role of lawman. The tension between his desire for peace and his responsibility to defend justice creates much of the film's dramatic power. The dialogue between Wyatt and the other characters reflects this inner struggle. Sometimes he speaks calmly and thoughtfully, showing that he wants to avoid violence whenever possible. At other moments, his words reveal the determination of a man who knows he must stand up for what is right. These emotional shifts make Wyatt feel like a